Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. And what a week if you're a Ducks fan out there. The Ducks played 3 rivalry games this week against division opponents. And Eddie, the Ducks won all 3 of these games. We talked about it. We thought last week that the Ducks would win 2. We wanted 3, and that's what we got, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, we expected them to go out and play hard against the Sharks, and we're hoping for wins against Arizona and San Jose, and they picked up the third one against LA too, which was, I mean, you couldn't really ask for a better 3-game stretch against these teams that are in front of you.
Yeah, if we go, we look back at first the game against the Sharks. The Ducks got on the board in this one first. Raquel in the first period, which wasn't really the best first period for the Ducks. The Sharks actually registered the first 5 or 6 shots in this game, and then the Ducks started to pick up some steam. And then in the second period, it kind of went back and forth. We saw the Sharks get 2 goals, but the Ducks also got 2 goals. And nervous time towards the end, in the final 2:07, the Ducks got called for a penalty, and San Jose pulled their goaltender, had the 6-on-4 advantage there, but the Ducks were able to withstand it and hold off and keep the win there at 3-2. Yeah,
it seems to be something that they do often, is taking a penalty in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and usually it's a 1 or 2 goal game, so it ends up making it tight. But they were to hold out a second period, which, I mean, they've been kind of on and off throughout the whole season. They either struggle or they play really well, and this one was kind of right in the middle, like you said. San Jose picked up the goal pretty early on, 2:43 into the second, but Lindholm grabbing a shorty, which, I mean, the penalty kill's been great all season, and when they can cash in with a shorty, it's even better. And then Garbutt picks up a goal, which, again, is sort of another surprise, and him scoring in that fourth line has actually been really good since it's been put together. And then Wingle's tying it out, and like you said, the third period, it was really tight, close in the end, having to kill off that penalty.
Yeah, I was cracking up when Garbutt scored. I remember a bunch of people cheering. They weren't sure who it was, and then when he scored, everyone's like, okay. And I'm like, hey, man, he got the goal, and it ended up being the game winner, his first goal as a Duck, and he gets it in the next game, too, which we'll talk about as well. But this game, I didn't really think this game was the best Ducks, effort. At least in the beginning of the first period there, the first 10 minutes, and then the last 5 or 6 minutes of the third. But they get it done. They didn't score on the power play. They were 0 for 4. But they battled throughout the whole game. They ended up killing all the penalties, which we've heard it over and over and over. The penalty kill has been outstanding at between 88 and 90, 90, almost 90% this whole season. So it was a good effort. It was a good win, and it was good for them to carry this momentum into the next game, Eddie.
Yeah, and them also going 3-1 against the Sharks in the season series is going to be helpful too, because I mean, looking at how the standings are now, you wouldn't put it to either team, either Anaheim or San Jose, to catch the Kings right now. So a first round playoff matchup would most likely be Anaheim San Jose. So getting the best of them in the season is always a good start.
Yeah, you're right. Going 3-1 against them is definitely key, and it's good. And other than really the season opener, I mean, the Ducks have owned the Sharks this year, which last season it was different. The Sharks owned us, so that's been a good turnaround for the Ducks against the Sharks this season. The Ducks also then they played back-to-back games against the Kings and against Arizona. And the Ducks, they came out strong in this one, Eddie, against the Kings. And Getzlaf decided not to pass for once and shot it and got the first goal of the game. And the Ducks ended up rolling in this one. By the time the second period was over, it was 4-1 Ducks. And they rolled in this game. Alec Martinez got a late goal in the last 20 seconds or whatever. But this was a dominant performance by the Ducks. Really, I mean, the final score is 4-2. It could have been a lot worse. Quick got booted out early, which was awesome to see. And this was probably one of the best complete performances by the Ducks all season long.
Yeah, and there's not many teams that can go into LA or even play LA and score 4 goals. And I think the last people you would expect to score 4 goals the way the Ducks have been scoring this season would be Anaheim. But I mean, it's just a great effort. Like you said, they got off to a good start. Getzlaf finally gets his first even strength goal in 61 games, so that's good for him. And it looked to motivate him too. He shot the puck a couple more times in some positions you would normally expect him to pass, and he does eventually make the pass to Perron, who, I mean, he was really one of the best performers in this game. He had 3 points, and I mean, since picking him, since him coming back over to the Western Conference, he's just been amazing for the Ducks. He's got 8 points in the 7 games, I believe. So I mean, it's just been a great start for him in Anaheim, and then Garbett again, him picking up a goal, and he gets his back-to-back game winners, which is, I mean, something we wouldn't have really expected from him. And then Lindholm too, he puts one in on the power play and gets goals in back-to-back games, and like you said, just a complete performance. I mean, there was the late goal by Martinez. There's not much that Gibby could really do on the play.
Yeah, not at all in the last play, but it didn't matter. The way the Ducks played in this game was awesome. Like you said, Garbett getting another goal. He's got 2 goals on the Ducks now, both game winners in back-to-back games. He's got 3 points in 5 games now. Perron comes over, like you said, he's got 8 points in 7 games. He's got 3 goals with the Ducks. And, we've talked about this last week. All these new lines are all working and all going. But, the added bonus now, Eddie, is the fourth line has been scoring too, because now you're seeing, Santorelli had one a couple games ago. We'll talk about in the Arizona game, he has one. So you'll see the fourth line contributed a goal in each of the last 4 games. So, the Ducks, when you have these 4 lines and they're all scoring, it's going to make it, chaos for the other teams, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to match up against if everybody's scoring. And you could try and shut down one line, but like we said last podcast, you've got a superstar on the other. You've either got Perry, if you try and shut down Getzlaf's line, you've got Kessler on that line, and I guess now you've got Garbett on the fourth line who's scoring game-winning goals left, right, and center. So yeah, I mean, it's really good. We expected them to come out and play well, and they were playing well going into these 3 games, and now they come out of it on a 6-game winning streak.
Yeah, and as well, if you saw, we had our watch party too at El Ranchito. We're going to have another one on February 18th. It's another Thursday coming up here. And we had a lot of fun. If you saw Phil Hewitt out there, he was tweeting the Kings and their fans, and I have to say Phil was winning. I mean, even though he is our guy for the Ducks, I mean, it was pretty funny. If you hadn't seen tweets out there, go back and look at his account. It was some epic stuff going on during the game there. I was trying to do the game updates while he's battling it out in some of the photos you may have seen on our Facebook page. But, if you can make it to the watch parties, come out. It's a good time. Phil comes out. Sometimes we have other representatives from the Ducks that we've had there in the past, training staff and whatnot that have been there. Good crowd, good amount of food. We give away stuff as well. So just want to remind you of that. And with that, the Ducks ended up finishing this week against Arizona. They came back home. And another good game for the Ducks. They didn't start out quite as well as we wanted them to in the opening couple minutes. They gave up the early goal there to Ryder. But the Ducks ended up pouring it on in the second period, getting a couple of goals. Lindholm, again, his 3rd goal in 3 games. Santorelli, as we talked about, scored, and that's the fourth line getting their 4th goal in 4 games, 1 apiece each game. And then the Ducks just turned on the afterburners, Eddie, in the 3rd period and just blew Arizona out. And there was another solid win by the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a kind of a struggling start to the first period. I mean, we've seen them do that a little bit more lately, where they've kind of got picked on in the first period, and in the first few minutes, Detroit twice in a row that happened to, and then obviously in this game as well. But they finished that period strong, and then they took it to Lindback in the next 2 periods. I mean, the game got a little chippy, and then from there, that's the Ducks style. They like to play that way, and I mean, Arizona can play that way too, but they're a little bit smaller. So I mean, anytime the Ducks can play a more physical game, it works in their advantage, and we saw it in this game. And they really victimized Lindback on that stick side, and it was just a great effort. Coming on the 3rd period, tied at 2, and you get those 2 early goals, and you really seal the deal early on in the 3rd period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big plays, too, was Santorelli's goal, because you see Lindback go behind the net. He kind of whiffs on trying to pass it. Santorelli steals it and just throws it in the back of the net. And that was huge, because it was right after Lindholm's goal, and now the Ducks are up 2-1. So that was a big play in the game. And then, like you said, the 3rd period, Patrick Maroon basically just went nuts in that period. He got the assist on Perry's goal. Then he scored a goal which was taken away, and I know a lot of people were upset, but if you go back and look at it, Kessler does slash Lindback's stick out of his hand, so that's why probably wouldn't have mattered. The puck probably would have gone in anyways, but the rule's a rule, so that's why the goal is disallowed. But then he comes back and scores again anyways on the power play. So Maroon had an awesome night with a goal and 2 assists, and even our Iron Man Cogliano, he got in there too as well, Eddie.
Yeah, and I'm not, I agree that it was a good call on the play. I just think with the way they do the coaches challenges, I know there's a time limit. I mean, I did try looking up. I'm not sure the limit that coaches have to call it after a goal's been scored, but I mean, they were celebrating. They're at the bench already. They were talking it over. It was at least a couple minutes before Tippett finally decided to challenge the play, and I think it's something they definitely have to look at for next season. I'm sure they'll go in and at the GM meetings at the end of the season and kind of review how these calls been working because not just in this game but in other games, it seems like the coaches have a little bit more time than they should really get to call a challenge.
No, and that's a good point, Eddie, too, because I mean, I remember at the game, we all were like, yeah, it's a good goal, and we're celebrating, and already put the tweet out that we scored and everything, and then when they said that they were going back and reviewing it, you were right. It was kind of like, wow, it was a little bit late there. So I don't know the exact time limit or if there is one. I actually have not looked that up. Like you mentioned, I don't know what the actual rule is. I mean, I think once the play starts again, I think you can't after that. But I don't know because they show the replay, and I'm not really sure how they factor that in. But it is a good point, Eddie.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I remember hearing at the beginning of the season, I think it's somewhere around 45 seconds. I obviously could be wrong, but I think it has to be somewhere around there. And they were about to drop the puck before the refs were telling Tippett to get his players on the ice. They're going to drop the puck, and then he finally says he's going to challenge the call. And I mean, we've seen that all year. It's been an issue. I mean, I enjoy having the rule. I think there's still a couple problems with it, but I mean, it's something you could expect from a rule in its first season.
Yeah, I agree. There'll be some edges that need to get smoothed out on this, but at least it ended up not affecting the game, thankfully. And Maroon ended up scoring, so it's kind of poetic justice for him there. And he's been playing a lot better with the new line of Raquel and Perry. As we talked about, all these lines have been playing very, very well. And this kind of goes into our fan questions. We've had a lot of questions about the trade deadline, the roster, and what the Ducks should do or maybe not do. So we'll kind of go with the fan questions on that note. We had one on Twitter from JJ Bear that asked about the Ducks roster, and they wanted to know if the roster, the way it is now, is playoff material. And Eddie, I really do think it is. I think all four lines have been scoring. We've seen the Ducks score 38 goals in the last 10 games. They've gone 8, 2, and 0 in that span. I don't really see a concern with the lineup now, other than maybe adding depth with Horkoff being out. We're kind of short one forward spot. That's kind of my thoughts on that, Eddie.
Yeah, I think we've said all season with the defensive hockey they play, and they really do play a playoff style of hockey. I mean, they limit chances. I think they're third in shots against per game, which is something they've been good at all season. The penalty kill has been good. And now they're starting to score. And I mean, there's not many things they really need to work on right now. They've won 6 games in a row. They play a physical style of hockey, and I think it's built for the playoffs. And I mean, this roster so far, I think the only issue you have with it is now that everybody's healthy and they're back, and once Stoner's back as well, you're gonna have an issue with having too many NHL defensemen on the roster. And I think that's the only way they make a trade. But as for being ready for the playoffs, I think this is as good as they can get right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole thing about the trading situation, and we've had a couple different questions about that this week from various people, about what the Ducks should do in terms of moves and whatnot. Kind of curious. I mean, we can kind of play a little armchair GM right here, but I think what the Ducks may end up doing is if they do trade a defenseman for a forward, that would be, allow them to bring Theodore back up. Because, what we saw in this last week, we talked about how the Ducks have done so well last week. Actually, the last 2 weeks they've been on a roll, or 3 weeks even. I mean, the way they've been going. But in the last week, on the power play with Theodore gone, the Ducks were 2 for 16. So that's not really, great. They also had those 2 5-on-3s. against San Jose. One of them was only 20-some seconds. But anyways, they didn't score on those opportunities, even when it would go to the 5-on-4 after the 5-on-3. So I think that's kind of what I lean towards if the Ducks are going to make a move. We talked about that last time. What do you think, Eddie? I mean, the Ducks don't necessarily have to make a move, but I mean, what's your thoughts?
And even if they do make a move, Stoner's still not playing. Right now, we have six guys playing that, you wouldn't really want to scratch any of them. You can't send any of them down, and you still have that seventh guy in Stoner who's injured. And you'd say you trade a guy like Vatanen. Well, then Stoner probably takes that spot. Even, being able to bring Theodore up and play him. I don't think you scratch Stoner. They really never have scratched him. I think they want him to play when he comes back, and right now he is the seventh guy. So without moving a guy, he's already in that position. So I think if you trade one, Theodore probably doesn't come back up unless there's an injury this season, which it is disappointing to see, but I'm kind of okay with it. I think the defense is still good right now. They obviously struggled a little bit on the power play, going for 2 for 16, but that's just a little bit below their average. I mean, if they go 3 or 4 for 16, it's right around or even a little bit above their average for the season. I mean, just having Theodore up and how well it was doing, I think is only the issue. Before that is they were scoring, I mean, at least a power play goal every game. So, but yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see. The trade deadline's getting closer. It's only about 3 weeks away now, so it'll be interesting to see what Murray has planned.
Yeah, and in terms of Stoner, Stevens just put out a thing earlier today that he's not on the road trip right now. So it looks like he still is, got that nagging injury. And like you said, that's the only time he's really not played it. He's not really been a, scratch unless it's been some kind of injury related thing. So that's kind of a situation where we have to, watch and see. Like you said, he's kind of the seventh one. I know some people say, oh, we should trade him and whatnot. And, I really don't think it's going to happen just because that contract is just too big. So I don't see that happening. Um, but we'll have to see. I've heard, rumors that, we've heard about Botnan. I've heard some people talking about Fowler. Um, but, it's going to be tough. I think they might move a defenseman still for a forward if they're going to do anything. That's just what my gut tells me. That's just my own opinion, basically. It's not really on anything else I've heard other than, there's some of those rumors out there. But that's what I see maybe happening. But like you said, if the Ducks don't do anything in terms of the defense, it's not really the end of the world. The only thing is if they get Stoner back and they do try to send somebody down, like possibly Holzer, all the guys right now, all 8 that they have to pass through waivers. And the Ducks have been burned twice on that, Eddie. So I don't know if that's something the Ducks would want to try again.
Yeah, and I think Lindholm is pretty much as untouchable as you can get right now. I mean, people imagine him as possibly being a trade piece going the other way, but I think right now he's arguably one of our best defensemen in the lineup, if not the best. In the way he's been playing lately, he's finally scoring goals. He's got 3 his last 3 games, and I mean, it really comes down to Fowler and Vatanen. I don't think you can move Stoner's contract. I think a lot of other teams will look to add guys like Yandel and some other higher end UFAs at that price tag and pay just a little bit extra for a lot better defensemen. And it all depends on what they want to do. I mean, Vatanen's the guy who's been mentioned the most. Fowler just came back from injury, and if they want to keep 3 right-handed shots in the lineup, Fowler's a guy you could move. Or I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think it has to come down between those 2 guys. I doubt they move to Prey. Manson's obviously going to stay. So it'll be interesting to see if they even make a move at all.
Yeah, and I mean the other concern too that some of the fans, actually, we were just talking about on Facebook just before the podcast, was about the Lindholm and the Anderson, agent situation. The news that came out from Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet, is that Lemieux is representing both of them now. He's the sole one now. If you didn't hear the news, he was working with another partner. There's this whole big drama about who was going to represent him. So he's now the one representing both of them, which is good because the Ducks can move forward. They can talk to Lemieux, basically, for both Anderson and Lindholm and try and get those things worked out. The only thing that was kind of interesting, Eddie, is I looked on the NHLPA site, and Lemieux is still not listed as an official agent. So I know he was in the process of doing it. I don't know if they didn't update the website yet or not, but I still haven't heard if Lemieux's an official agent yet. So that's one thing that's kind of interesting in this whole situation. But at least it looks like the picture's gotten a little bit clearer.
Yeah, and I mean it'll be you know we to see how that works out. I don't think it will affect the players themselves. I mean, they're both coming with RFAs, but I don't see it affecting them and how they get signed. It'll be nice to have that situation resolved so it's not in the back of their minds and it's nothing that Bob Murray has to work through while preparing to sign these guys for long term.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the Ducks will be able to get it done. I'm hoping, with obviously both of them because the Ducks can have two goalies. We've talked about that issue before, and I know people go back and forth on this, but you look at Dallas and they've had two goalies, and I think the Ducks can do that. I mean, obviously, when it gets closer to playoff time, they may have to lean on one more than the other. But as far as it's going right now, I like what we're seeing. Only issue I really have has just been the power play lately with Theodore gone.
Yeah, Gibson's creeping up to having about the same amount of games started as Freddie is now. So I think they seem to be using Gibson a little bit more, but they're at where we thought they would be around this point of the season, having almost the same amount of games started, kind of sharing the workload. Obviously, Freddie had the majority of it in the beginning of the season, but Gibson's kind of taken over a bit of that. Since really a little bit before the All Star game, and he's been great. And Freddie's been great as well as lately. They both combined to get wins over this 3 game stretch, and we're gonna need them come playoffs.
Yeah, and with that, this we can talk about the schedule coming up this week. The Ducks going on the road for the next 2 weeks, and this week they've got 4 games. They're starting off with Pittsburgh back to back with the Flyers, then Columbus and Chicago. So we're going to see Gibson and Anderson, in these 2 games coming up here. They'll split those two most likely. The Ducks have won both these games. They beat the Penguins 2-1. They beat the Flyers 4-2. So these are 2 games that the Ducks could win to start the road trip, Eddie. The other situation, too, for Pittsburgh is Malkin has been out. We were looking at that this morning. He's been out for 2 games with an injury. They expect him to be back against the Penguins, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Either way, the Penguins have been playing well of late. It's not going to be an easy game, obviously. I mean, the Ducks only beat them 2-1, but I think the Ducks can pull out at least the 2 wins to start this trip, Eddie.
Yeah, and Malkin's been key to their success all season. He's been great for them, since the beginning of the season. Just lately, before the All Star break, Crosby's come back to being his normal self, and he had 3 points in their last game in their win over Florida, and they've been good lately. They've been able to roll the 3 or 4 lines, which is something they need to do, and it'll be interesting to see if Malkin's back or not. The consensus is that he's going to be back for that game, and it's going to make it a lot more difficult because if he's not there for the game against Anaheim, you really only have to focus on Crosby, and then you'll be able to roll your 4 lines over and get better matchups. But if you have to focus on both Malkin and Crosby, it's going to be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be a definite important part in that game. And the Flyers, they've been playing so-so. The Ducks have taken them out. I mean, obviously it's a back-to-back scenario, which makes it difficult for the Ducks, but I think that they can, pull out in this one. They also then play Columbus, who Columbus has been just not doing well this season, unfortunately for them, but the Ducks should be able to take them out. They did win a couple games earlier this week, some nail-biter games. There was one game in there where William Karlsson, Wild Bill, he scored a couple goals, which is good for him. He's been doing, decent with Columbus, but overall the team has not been doing well. So that's one. You don't want to, say any game is a gimme because as soon as you say that, that's when you lose. But this is a game that the Ducks, they should win that one, and then they go to Chicago, where the Ducks have lost the 2 previous meetings, both in overtime. Obviously, we remember Black Friday, which was the one that we should have won, but that one's going to be a tough one. The Hawks have been playing well for a while now, Eddie. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think in this next week, the Ducks definitely can win 3 out of these 4.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, Philadelphia, they've been playing better lately. Gossip Spear has been really good for them on the blue line. He's really, helped sort of turn around their season. I still don't think that they'll make the playoffs. They'll at least try and make a push. I mean, they're in a good spot to try and make a wild card spot right now. They're in a tight game right now against the Capitals, down 3-2. And in Columbus, I mean, this is a game. No game is easy, like you said, but this is a game you should win. They've allowed the most goals in the league. They can play a tight game at times. They just beat Calgary the other night, and it's really a tale of two teams. Sometimes you can go in there and you can get played tough, and it's going to be a hard game, and other times you're just going to blow them out, like Edmonton blew them out 2 or 3 games ago, and I think it's one they should definitely win. I mean, Philly, it's going to be a tough game. I think they should win that one. Columbus, that in the position the Ducks are in right now, that should be an easy win. And you could have a situation when they go into Chicago winning 9 in a row. I mean, obviously that's the ideal situation. Pittsburgh is going to be a tough game, but I mean the real story is going to be Chicago. They're 21-5-1 at home. I mean, United Center is not a friendly place to go and play. They're one of the best teams in the league at home, and they're one of the best teams in the league, overall right now. So that's going to be a tight game. Like you said, we've played them tough this season. We've lost both in OT. And even picking up a point would be good, but obviously we'd like to go there and beat them.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun and exciting week, and it's going to be, it's not going to be easy, but we think the Ducks can still, get through this with a series of wins. The Ducks are going to play the Flyers too, and that kind of brings us to another fan question we had. Katrina asked about Simmons and his punch that he landed in the game where he didn't get any penalty for it, and then you had Weidman with his issue. He got the 20 minutes for hitting the referee, which he appealed it. Probably will go down in the number of games. We haven't heard yet. But the main question that Katrina asks is about the player safety. And the way that it's handled, is it flawed or is it heading in the right direction? And I think this is a good question, Eddie, because this is something league wide that's been going on. A lot of heavy criticism from different people about the player safety rulings and whatnot. For me, the way I look at it, I think they've gotten better in terms of actually calling people out to the mat, basically, and penalizing people for the different things that they've done. I think they've gotten better at it. But on the other side, I still think it's been inconsistent, kind of what she alludes to in her question there, Eddie.
Yeah, I definitely think there's room for improvement. I mean, the reason Weidman got 20 games, I think, was to appeal to the refs and just make sure that the league can show that they actually do care and that something like this isn't taken lightly and that they give him 20 games. And I fully do expect that they appeal will bring it down closer to 15. I think 10 would probably be too low, but you could expect maybe 12 or 15 games to be the final suspension for Weidman. And I did. We checked out that sucker punch before the game. I actually didn't even hear about it until you mentioned the question before the podcast. And yeah, I mean that's something that could definitely be looked at. I'm sure the league will look at it. I mean, I'd be surprised if they didn't. It was a sucker punch that led to McDonough leaving the game with a possible concussion, and if he ends up actually being injured, that's something the league has to look into.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that they definitely should look into, and they definitely, should be a penalty for. So we've seen them miss some things during the season, that's for sure. So all we can do is hope it gets better. I think they've gotten better, but like you said, there's room for improvement. And speaking of room for improvement, if you haven't gone on the NHL website since they redid it, I am not a big fan, Eddie. They've made the design, I guess, better in terms of the way it looks, but it's just so difficult to navigate through it, and things are zoomed in weird. I just don't understand what's going on with the website. I know they merged with baseball, but I'm having a hard time looking at it. I think you talked about how it's been kind of awkward too.
Yeah, they've made it really difficult to find some of the things that were easy to find before. I mean, just finding the Kings and Sharks games from 2 days ago is just difficult to find. I used to be able to go to the schedule and you would be able to go back and search for during the month and grab all the games they played previously, and now finding previously played games other than their last game is hard to find, and everything is zoomed in, and it's an interesting decision. I mean, obviously they want to modernize the website. That I mean, NHL.com hasn't changed. I don't know for how long. So I mean, it was definitely overdue. But yeah, I don't know the way they've launched it, and there's been problems accessing the website. Game Center was down, I believe, the first few nights that they launched it. It wasn't loading games on their website or on other apps like Xbox or anything like that too. So it just definitely a poor launch by NHL, but I mean they've got some things to work on. The design is nice, and I think they're moving in the right direction even with all the things going wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the player safety. But yeah, I mean, it's been difficult. I mean, if you see our recaps, we get the videos from the NHL website. Basically, is where we put them on the bottom. That's where you get all the highlights. Unless it's an away game and I'm at home, recording the TV or something. But that's what you'll see. And a lot of times we put out the recaps the next morning because that's when they post the videos. And for example, like you mentioned, like the Kings and actually the Kings and the Ducks game, they didn't post the video till I think it was like 12 or 1 o'clock the following day, when usually it's posted early in the morning. So they've had problems uploading the videos as well. And I know that the Ducks app has had issues trying to get the videos up there too from the NHL. So I mean, I hope they get this all worked out, but it's just been kind of irritating, I guess, Eddie, for the last week or so.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, yeah, there'll be something to work on for sure, and hopefully it gets better. There's always some issue somewhere with somebody for media and websites. So, yeah, I mean, it's NHL.com. It's a place where everybody goes for information, and I'm sure they'll work on hopefully making it easier to navigate.
Yeah, and I guess just wanted to end up the show with our new nicknames. I don't know if you heard, Eddie, but you're now the alternate captain, Eddie Jones. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that you are the alternate captain now. So people were laughing during, I guess, the watch party photos or whatnot. They were asking about why I had a C on my jersey, and I never even really thought about it. And I just replied, "Oh, well, it's Captain Ducks and Pucks. I mean, I don't know, like what else would the C be?" So that came out, and then that led into the discussion of, well, who's the alternate captain? And then people nominated Eddie, obviously because of the podcast show, deservedly so. So you're the alternate captain. We haven't picked another one yet. Maybe we'll figure one out in the next week or so. But so there's our new nickname. Instead of the Mike and Eddie show, we could call it Captain and Alternate Captain Ducks and Pucks, I guess. I don't know, but we had a lot of fun this week with you guys on social media. And at the watch party too, those of you that came, thank you for coming. We had a good time. But like I said, we're going to have another one on the 18th. We're going to have a couple more in March. In March, we're going to do some on the weekends, maybe get more of the weekend crowd, because I know it's difficult when you have to work during the week. So we're going to try and change that up a little bit. And we'll just keep you guys updated as always. And we'll see you next week. Let's go Ducks.